Well, the Secretary of State for Scotland, David Mundell, joins me now from our London studio. David Mundell, we'll talk about all the parliamentary shenanigans in a moment, but first of all, I just wanted to talk to you about the fire at Glasgow School of Art.
Yes.
I mean, this is 2 times in the last 4 years. Do you think there needs to be some sort of public inquiry into what's going on?
Obviously, there is going to be inquiries, Gordon, into what has happened. This fire, it appears, is much more severe, sadly, than the previous one because it's engulfed the entire building and has perhaps left the outer stonework in an unsafe condition. So this fire is much more serious. I think clearly the various inquiries that naturally follow from a fire will take place, and hopefully they will get to the bottom of exactly what has happened.
Is there a case for a public inquiry?
I don't at this stage think that there's a case for a public inquiry unless someone can bring forward some exceptional reason. I think the initial inquiry should take place as would normally follow a fire into what was the cause and what were the related circumstances.
All right. Now, rebuilding this, apparently during the reconstruction after the last fire, the whole thing was digitally mapped to an accuracy of about 1 millimetre. So it might be possible to rebuild it in facsimile. I mean, given that everyone seems to agree this building is not just of importance to Glasgow or indeed to Scotland, but to the whole of the UK and internationally, will your government commit that you would fund rebuilding the whole thing?
We will contribute to that. We helped the last time. We put forward 10 million. I had the pleasure, and I didn't realise that it would be a transitory one, of visiting 2 weeks ago and seeing the work that had been done on that restoration up in the famous hen run, the open-fronted corridor.
10 million is one thing. What I'm suggesting is that the British government could say, look, this is a building of British significance and of international significance. We will pay whatever it takes, even if it's a couple of $100 million, to rebuild it.
What we are saying is that we'll play our part. We've said that. I said that yesterday. We played our part in the previous rebuild. We need to get to understand exactly what's going to require to be done. When I spoke to the School of Art yesterday, for example, you know, there are many more structural issues. For example, I think myself, from an uneducated way in the sense of detailed knowledge of these matters, that it would look as if it was possible to restore it, and if that is at all possible, that should be done, and the UK government will play its part in making that happen.
OK, now, last week's events in Parliament, there's a debate, isn't there, tomorrow about this row about devolution in the House of Commons, isn't there?
Yes, there is. Yes.
In the light of that, the fact there is a debate, do you think the SNP should drop its plans to disrupt Parliament?
I hope that they won't disrupt Parliament, because whilst, you know, in a one-off stunt you can attract a lot of attention, and they did with that. Actually, the way in which to change things is to take part in the debate and to actually look to influence the outcome of events.
So you think they should drop their plans?
Obviously, within the rules of Parliament, it's up to them to do what they think appropriate, to represent their cause, to represent their interests. But I don't think stunts take us forward. The walkout didn't achieve anything. In fact, it just delayed the debate that's going to take place tomorrow. That debate would have taken place on Thursday, and because of that debate not taking place, I myself actually made a statement so that MPs could hold the government to account in relation to the Seoul Convention and the EU withdrawal bill.
Right, now, everyone watching will have their breath bated for you, waiting for you to tell us what new proposals you will bring forward tomorrow.
There won't be any new proposals, Gordon.
You've got no new proposals?
The government set out its position in line with the existing constitutional settlement. And at the heart of this, as was obvious in the statement and the questions that we had on Thursday, is that the SNP don't accept the existing constitutional settlement. They want to change that settlement. They want to bring about independence. They don't hide that. That's not a surprise to anybody watching either. But the core of this dispute is that there are just two different views of how how Scotland's place should be in the future. One, which the people of Scotland voted for in 2014 as part of the United Kingdom, and one is an independent Scotland.
Right, so let's just be absolutely clear about this. As the Secretary of State for Scotland, there's a 3-hour debate to try to resolve an issue, and you're telling us you've got nothing new to say.
What we've got to say is that we want to move on. We want to move on and focus on actually agreeing the frameworks.
Right, but you've got no proposals to do that.
There are proposals to do that.
But nothing new.
There are proposals to do that in relation to setting out and beginning the discussions about how we govern matters across the UK after we leave the EU.
Okay,
these are the issues that are these are the issues that are actually important to people and businesses in Scotland.
But nothing new.
There's nothing new in the sense that these matters have been debated extensively. The Scottish Government have a position which they've had for a year. They don't seem to have suggested any basis on which to change that position. The Welsh Government was able to accept the huge compromise the UK Government made. The Scottish Government are still in exactly the same position they were a year ago.
You've said that you put forward to Mike Russell proposals which I think had been drawn up by Gordon Brown, right? Which incorporated various ways around that, and that they were rejected by Mike Russell. Is that correct?
At the end of the previous week, Gordon Brown, Professor Jim Gallagher, came forward with a proposal which actually was reflected then subsequently in amendments that the Labour Party put down, and we took those. We took that as a serious effort to try and resolve this situation. It didn't actually meet our own requirements because its focus was on international relations rather than the internal market of the UK, which is preserving of which is our priority. But we did reach out to the Scottish Government to see if they were interested in examining those proposals.
Can we just be clear on this? These amendments, which you say Labour's put forward, which reflect the Gordon Brown proposals that you put to the Scottish Government, will those amendments now be taken? Because at least you might get Scottish Labour back on your side.
Those amendments won't be taken because of the way in which the timing issues fell on Tuesday. So those issues won't be debated, but they didn't meet our concerns because they didn't focus on the internal market. What I had hoped was possible was that they could perform a bridge that might allow us to get into a further discussion with the Scottish Government.
This all sounds, if you'll forgive me, a bit bonkers. You're saying the Labour Party have put forward amendments which you agree with, even though they don't help you in certain ways. But those amendments, even though, and we were about to talk to Scottish Labour, even though it could get Scottish Labour back on your side, they won't actually be put to Parliament. That just doesn't make any sense.
Hopefully I didn't confuse you, Gordon, because we don't support the Scottish Labour amendments because we didn't believe that they took us forward. What I did think that they might do was provide a basis for further discussions with the Scottish Government, but they didn't. The Scottish Government were very clear that their position is exactly the same position as they had a year ago, and that they were not willing, unlike the UK Government, to enter into a compromise on these issues.
Right. The problem you have now is that the SNP have been calling for your resignation, but Labour have also been calling for your resignation. Don't you think it would be in the interests of getting some sort of settlement on this if you were to step aside and let someone else have a go?
I don't think that, because I don't think that there is a settlement to be had. I've always looked to bring forward agreed amendments that had been agreed with the Scottish Government, but it's become quite clear throughout this process that it's not possible to
but the problem for you is if it was just the SNP saying, look, David Mundell needs to go, I can hear your argument. But it's not. Scottish Labour are also saying, look, this Secretary of State is not helpful in this process. He needs to either sort this out now or step down. And you've just told us you've got nothing new to say on the subject.
I find the Scottish Labour position completely incomprehensible. The Welsh Labour government were able to accept the huge compromise the UK government made. Labour peers, Scottish Labour peers in the House of Lords were able to accept the compromise which was offered. It's only, it's only Scottish Labour in the Scottish Parliament and some of their MPs who can't. And I think people watching this programme, given Labour's proud unionist credentials, will be very disappointed that when the choice came between the SNP and the United Kingdom, the Scottish Labour chose the SNP.
But the fact is that every political party now with representation in the Scottish Parliament is against you. The only people who are on your side on this are your own Scottish Conservatives.
That's not the case, Gordon, because the Welsh Labour Party, Scottish Labour peers in the House of Lords, Scottish Liberal Democrat peers in the House of Lords have supported the compromise that the government have put forward because, as Jim Wallace, the former Deputy First Minister of Scotland, said, this does not undermine the devolution settlement.
Hang on, Mr Mundell, you are the Secretary of State for Scotland. It's your job to make sure Scotland's interests are represented in Parliament and to stick up for them in the camp. Now, hang on a second. You said amendments would be brought forward at the report stage and they weren't. You said there would be time to debate these amendments we've been talking about and there wasn't time. People will say, look, you just haven't done the job that you're there to do. Let someone else do it.
What I said in relation to the amendments was that I wanted to bring forward agreed amendments. What's emerged throughout this process is that it's not been possible because the Scottish Government are not going to agree on those amendments because they have a completely different view of the constitutional settlement than everyone else. They want the Scottish Parliament to have a veto over items and matters which apply to the whole of the United Kingdom, and that's not acceptable. My job is to stand up for Scotland, but it's to stand up for the Scottish people's verdict in the 2014 referendum and the constitutional arrangements that we have. It's not to change the Constitution by the back door during this Brexit process.
All right, Luke, we'll have to leave it there. David Mundell, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. Now, listening to that was a Labour MP, Paul Sweeney, and in our Edinburgh studio, the SNP